I'm Stacy Fritz. I'm the moderator for Food for Thought with Believe Big, and we have a special guest today. We can't wait to introduce Heather Dahm. She is deep knowledge in oncology nutrition. I am going to, since she has such an expansive background, I'm going to pass the baton to her in just a moment. But before I do, just a reminder, today's topic is nourishing soups and broths. I can't wait since the weather is starting to change here on the East Coast. I'm curious about Sarah's weather in Jacksonville and Heather's weather and wherever you all are located. But before we do so, just a reminder that this is an overarching topic. If there are points during our webinar today that you have specific questions, either about your own diagnosis or somebody that you care about, please, it's not at all that we don't want to answer those directly and clearly, but it would be something that we'll take offline. So feel free to throw into the chat any questions that you have along the way. As I mentioned, I will moderate. I will pass those questions to Heather at certain parts of our webinar. And other than that, let's just have a great time. And again, I'm super excited to hear about this because it is sweater weather and soup weather here. So take it away, Heather, and welcome. And we can't wait to hear what you are going to share with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Stacy. I am generally just so grateful to be able to share this with all of you, especially in such a timely way, as you said, Stacy, with the seasons changing. It's just that perfect time to grab that warm cup of soup or broth. So, without further ado, then I am going to jump in. Sorry, there we go. Okay. So, just the overarching message here, soups and broths really can provide such an impressive variety to your table and your microbiome while being easy to digest and hydrating. And I think in general, a lot of what Believe Big does is just sharing that healing message. And so that's what I'm hoping to share today. So the agenda that we have, I'm going to go through just the basic foundations of health, just as a quick reminder on that. And then I'm also going to go through, of course, soups and broths and how they are nutritional powerhouses for healing. And I have pulled together a few recipes to share with all of you. Feel free to take some screenshots or whatever you want so that you can make those for yourself or your families through this holiday season. So the foundations of health. I just want to touch on this quickly. I know that you guys have done a lot of content around this, but as we all know, our diet doesn't really do too much for us if we don't have those other foundations in place too. So with nutrient density, we want to get whole foods from organic, regenerative farms, and at a minimum, just trying to eat in season. Sleep, we want to be able to clean up our sleep environment, trying to stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bed, or maybe having that broth or something that's very low sugar sort of right before bed. We also want to manage that stress. Whenever we feel that stress, trying to take a 10-minute walk or take a few deep breaths. I know Stacy is the master of the breath work. And so, revisiting any of her content on breath work that she's done is fabulous. I also like to have a mantra with me, sort of when I'm at those points of acute stress. And I just like to say, I'm safe, I'm happy, and I'm healing. Digestion is, of course, huge, huge, huge. I'm going to go into that in quite a bit more detail on the next screen here and talk about how soups and broths really have an impact on our digestion. And then blood sugar regulation. Mood swings, if you're experiencing mood swings, fatigue, maybe you're waking up a lot at night, or maybe having that energy crash after lunch, it could be interesting for you to experiment with measuring your glucose or monitoring your glucose on a more finite level there.
We talked about that on the last webinar, so it was
Love it.
fabulous. So we're getting a little bit of overlapping information, and I agree with you. I forget the research on how many times you have to hear something before we really get it. So the reminders are really excellent.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Yeah, and as I mentioned, I really did just want to go into digestion a little bit more. just because it is so relevant here. Digestion really starts in your brain. How relaxed are you? How comforted do you feel with that meal in front of you? And who doesn't get that? Ooh, yum. You know, when you have that warm super broth in front of you, especially during this cold season, as Stacy was sharing at the beginning of this, that it's just really soup and broth season. And with soups too, part of that north to south digestion process is really masticating your food with your teeth and your mouth. And with soups, right, they're already like pretty soft. They're already, somewhat pre-digested, in certain ways, depending on how you prepare them. So that can really, if you have an individual that's needing a lot of healing, taking the weight off of their digestive process can really be a beneficial strategy for them. And in general, right, I think just always as you're eating, just making sure to take those extra deep breaths and sitting down with someone that you love and really just enjoying that meal and going slowly and allowing the enzymes in your mouth to really, coat the food that's in your mouth and really aid in that digestive process.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna comment just real quick, just based on the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response. The relaxation side of us is that rest and digest. And when we are in that energy mode, or we're in that more, again, energetic mode, we're not able to do both necessarily at the same time really well. So I'm going to mirror and emphasize with an exclamation point what Heather just said. When we're talking about digestion, we really do need to be in a relaxed state to get the maximum benefit of whatever we are going to consume. So back in the day when they used to say, make sure you're sitting down and don't eat in a hurry, that's a thing, right? And so I appreciate that a lot, because that rest digest, we want to give the body the ability to do its best work in the state in which it does its best work, which is in the relaxation response. So well said. I like that.
Absolutely. Thank you for chiming in there, Stacey. I really appreciate it. Yeah, our entire every cell in our body relies on a healthy digestive process. And as you're going to see here, and as you already probably know, eating soup really sets your body up for a digestive healing
Mm.
experience. Yeah. Um, so yeah, as said, right? In general, eating soup is really just a beautiful north to south digestion process, and it can be incredibly healing. And I just wanted to say, right, yeah, soups and broths are easily digestible. They're repairing and enhancing foods, and they can be so easily tailored to individual needs. I'm going to begin with broths here. Um, and bone broths specifically. So, bone broths can really just be a powerhouse for many of the systems in our body. They're rich in collagen, which is one of the building blocks for the connective tissues and the elasticity of our skin. Your body doesn't naturally produce collagen, so you actually need to replenish this frequently, if not daily, to be able to get those benefits, especially if you're suffering from joint pain. Maybe rather than adding more supplements, you could experiment with adding really high collagen rich bone broth. Um, Bone broth can also help to restore a healthy gut. Um, in cases where we've suspected a leaky gut, the bone broth can really help to heal that, especially throughout a fast, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail as well. And as it is improving your gut lining, it's also going to give your immune system a big boost. Almost 80% of your immune system is located in your gut. And then, really, yeah, as mentioned, the bone broth will really help to maintain the elasticity of your skin. As we age, we just generally lose that collagen that ultimately helps prevent the wrinkles and the sagging of skin. And it also brings in a lot of hydration as well.
Hmm. Question for you about the bone
Yes.
broth before you go there.
Yeah.
Is there I'm trying to think of how I want to ask this. Is there a limit to the amount of bone broth that whether or not you're on the cancering journey or not? For me, I love the sipping of the bone broth, and again, we've talked about this in other episodes where, you put a little turmeric in there, a little bit of sea salt, and that's my sipping drink, especially during this time. But I'm curious to know if there's can you consume too much, or is
Yeah,
the
that's a really good question. I mean, I think, is it, Julia Child that says everything in moderation, including moderation? Anyways, I appreciate that, but I think, um, I think with bone broths, you could probably drink it just like an electrolyte drink, right?
hmm Yes.
If you have a broth that you're really feeling, I personally don't have an experience being able to have too much. Now, when you have the vinegar in them and things like that, certainly you do want to be careful of your mouth and the enamel
Mm,
on your teeth and maybe drinking through a straw, to sort of prevent it from getting on the enamel of your teeth. But I think, as long as you're counting out your macros, like to, a gradated extent, right? We don't need to be super specific with the broths, but
mm,
I think that that can be, a way to sort of keep track of, how
great.
much or how little that you
This
need.
this recipe looks amazing and doesn't look too terribly challenging.
Yeah, I adapted this from Will Cole's book, The Inflammation Spectrum. It is a fabulous book. And I do generally just love this bone broth recipe. I sometimes throttle the amount of vinegar in it, as mentioned, just because sometimes it can get a little bit too vinegary for me as well. But in general, it really is just like a great base broth recipe because he has it set up so that you can use sort of any of the meat bones. So you can take a whole chicken carcass, a whole turkey carcass. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want the entire turkey carcass, like some bones of maybe like the main breast or maybe the legs. You could probably make two broth recipes with a whole turkey if it was a large turkey. And then 3 to 5 of those grass-fed beef bones or even a pound of fish bones. And you can take shellfish as well, like shrimp skins and clams. So there's a really wide variety here of what you can use as the base to be able to get that collagen and the amino acids and whatnot into it. And then these are all really pretty rough suggestions, right? Like 6 cloves of garlic, an onion, 2 large carrots scrubbed and chopped, 3 to 4 celery stalks rinsed and chopped, an inch of ginger root peeled and then sliced into coins just to really get a little bit more surface area there. And same with the turmeric. You can use turmeric powder, or you can also use a small, like 1 inch piece of turmeric root and slice and chop that into coins as well. And then that fresh parsley. And really, I've added, I have a ton of rosemary in my garden and sage and different things. You can throw really anything into this recipe. And then, kind of a fun point around it is just if you don't love the taste of it, from a raw perspective, of just like drinking the bone broth, you can also just put it into a soup, and that'll really, dilute any flavors that you maybe got too much of, right? So you can really experiment and play around with this. And this recipe makes about 4 quarts. And so when it's all complete and I've strained it and, discarded the whole pieces of bones and vegetables, I'll just pour it straight into 4 mason jars and toss it in the freezer. So, then you can get it out for whenever you're making a soup or you're going to just consume the broth in
I
general.
I think that's excellent. And question for you, of
Yeah.
these ingredients, what does Dr. Cole say about making sure that we choose organic for our ingredient list? Super important, right?
Very important. Yeah, I think with the organic, and I'll bring it up again later, but with the organic, you're really getting like a twofold benefit, right?
Hmm
You're getting the reduction in chemicals, and then you're also getting food that's been grown in soil that is actually cultivated to not need chemicals. So organic soils just inherently have way more nutrients that are transferred into the plant that you then consume.
hmm
I heard a statistic maybe in the last month here that the fruits and vegetables that we consume have 40% nutrients than they had for our grandparents,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
which
And
is
not to
pretty
digress or go
staggering.
down a rabbit hole, but I am cautiously optimistic that some eyeballs will be on our food sourcing very soon, and I'll leave it at that. But I
Really
nothing
good.
excites me more than really opening this huge can of worms in this conversation about our food sourcing and the depletion
Yes.
of our soil and all the nutrients. I'm my prayers are big because I think it's an
So
excellent
am
time and it is just reinforcing what you're saying and what we've all been saying for a long time that we need to do better. So I 100% agree. And I was curious because he didn't exactly articulate organic, but let's make sure that our listeners know that we are
Yes,
absolutely advocating for the best sourcing. It's worth it.
absolutely.
I know that it tends to be a little bit more expensive. However, to me, I call that an insurance policy. And again, if you are
100%.
on the cancering journey, I cannot emphasize enough that the quality of your food, whether or not you are or you aren't, is important. But in particular, when you are trying to heal,
Mhm.
it's these little nuance pieces that I feel very passionate about. And as Heather appears to be as well. So just note if you have taken a screenshot of the bone broth recipe, we want to make sure that you add in high quality fruits and vegetables to whatever recipe she continues to share.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that tangent. I really appreciate it. It is so, so important.
You got an accolade here that Sarah was saying she agrees that it is an excellent recipe and she already does this already. So,
Oh,
yep.
fabulous.
Yes.
Fabulous. And I wanted to say too, this is a bone broth recipe, but I have also used it to make a vegetable broth.
Mm.
So I simply just add more vegetable. And sometimes I actually have, broccoli stems, or I mean, I will really use almost anything in my broth. So you can add a lot of different vegetables to this, and then just simply make a veggie broth as well, and just omit the bones.
Heather, you bring up a really good point. What if we have on the call or in general for people who watch it back? I mean, the dynamic part of this recipe, again, we were talking about collagen, we were talking about protein and whatnot. Just suppose, let's make it up, that there is somebody who really wants the benefits of a broth recipe, but in fact is a vegetarian. Can you just comment on it? I mean, the obvious is we're losing that part of the whole chicken and whatnot, but what is your position on a vegetable broth recipe?
Yeah, I mean, I think my position is you're still, especially if you're going with the organic, local veg, right? You're still getting a ton of nutrients from those vegetables. You're not getting the collagen, of course, or as much protein from the broth, but you are still getting a lot of nutrients from the veg, of course.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good.
Um, and for those of you or us who do not necessarily like to make your own broth, you can also buy bone broth, of course. And so, if you're in a pinch or just don't like to make it, as mentioned, looking for organic, looking for grass fed, grass finished, or 100% grazed options that are stored in glass, which is why I have this fond one sort of on the front end of this. Um, that is going to be probably your best option. Bare Bones, the brand Bare Bones in the middle there is a little bit unique because it is packaged, and for if you're traveling on a plane or just on the go, it's a little packet that you can add, so it's a little bit more transportable, and you still get quite a bit of nutrients from it.
Have you tried
Um,
that one?
I
Y-
haven't actually
Yeah.
tried that one. I appreciate you asking. I don't know if anybody on the
There's
call
a,
has.
I'm going to get this wrong. I hope I don't, but there's another brand. It's Vital Protein may have a bone broth packet. And I have tried that one, not this bare bones. It, to me, it tastes very salty, which
Okay.
again,
Good to know.
depending on your palate and
Yeah.
what kind of salt they're using. Just FYI, that packaging, I don't know whether or not that's across the board, but the Vital Protein one, if I'm remembering the brand, so I'm curious because again, for our listeners and for those of us who are busy from thing to thing, having an option, it's like the same conversation that we say this grab and goes. And I do
Yeah.
think it's a fabulous option to be able to take bone broth with you on the road, especially for example, if you're flying, just getting a cup of hot water is perfect. It's easy and you can still do the thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, and Brodo is another good one here too. And I think worth noting, all of these can be purchased on Amazon or on
Mm.
Thrive. So they're fairly accessible for most. Um, and I wanted to go into a little bit of detail on fasting with bone broth. And I need to just 1 second. I accidentally locked my cat in here with me. Hold on 1 second.
I hate when that happens.
I
A
know.
locked cat. I'm really curious about this answer, so I'll fill in the space here with fasting with broth because I can't wait for you to tell me if it breaks the fast.
Aha, yeah. So it does technically break the fast, yes. But even though there are calories in the broth, you're still getting a lot of benefit with a bone broth fast, right?
Mm,
So this is a little bit different than just a straight up fast. It's fasting with bone broth. And this can be great for individuals who actually just maybe are starting their first couple of fasts and they want a little bit of extra support.
mm,
Or maybe their body is just somewhat compromised, maybe after doing chemo or some other, heavy medical procedure, and they want a little bit of additional support through their fast. This can be a really excellent way to get them through that fast while still getting a ton of benefits from it. So your digestive system certainly doesn't have to work as hard when it's just digesting the bone broth versus
mm,
food. And a lot of the ingredients that are in bone broth, um, as you're fasting, you're getting a lot of that benefit if you're doing just like a straight up fast. But if you're fasting with bone broth, you can help to repair your gut even more because of the healing properties in the bone broth
mm.
that we've already gone through.
We have
Um,
somebody that we work with Believe Big, and what she would do is, after she went through her treatment, a variety of different parts of her journey, she would follow up. Her go-to was to make sure that she consumed the bone broth post treatment, and then she would get into the red light sauna. That was just, she just
oh,
felt like it was like a detox all the way around,
yeah,
digestion and skin and whatnot. And I liked that she put that in place. It was like the thing that she looked forward to when we
that's
put
really
up here.
beautiful.
So that was a good one. That was a really good system that she had in place.
Yeah, that is a really good system because, yeah, it really can help to improve your liver function even more during a fast, and really help regulate your blood sugar, improving your insulin level or lowering your insulin levels and improving your insulin sensitivity as well. So yeah, I can see how she would have that experience, especially with the detoxification properties of it, as well as the collagen in it, right? Maybe
Yeah.
she felt like it was actually bringing it like directly to her skin, and joints in some respect. I love that. Um, and so then if you are going to do just a straight up fast, without having maybe just a water fast, right? Or an electrolyte fast, I think bone broth is also an excellent way to break your fast. I have this sourced from Jen Nolan, the lovely, lovely Jen
We love
Nolan at
her.
Remission Nutrition. So it's 1 cup of bone broth that you heat up on the stove top, and as it's like coming to a simmer, you can beat your egg and pour the egg in and kind of
Oh,
disperse it a bit like an egg drop soup. And then I just have my avocado already in the bowl and ready, and I just pour it onto that. And it really is just the perfect blend of macros to break your fast smoothly. Of course, we don't ever want to, especially once you're getting into those longer fasts, 36
Mhm.
hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and beyond, right? That you want to really break those fasts a little bit more slowly and allow
Mm.
your body time to accept, hey, we're doing food again, right? So, starting with something like this is slow. Like I said, it's really got that balance of macros, and it's really, really nourishing and just very filling, and a great way to start breaking your fast.
Heather, let me put a pause here for a second. Let's
Please.
just make sure our listeners don't have any questions because I feel like this is kind of a good one to pin. I want to make sure that there's no questions wrapped around breaking your fast. We may have newer folks on here, and I want to make sure that everybody is clear on what Heather is speaking on, whether or not this is something that has been recommended by your oncology nutritionist or something that you are doing on your own. Again, making sure that when those cells and the body and everything's ready to consume, as you mentioned, that we're doing so in a way that's supported with the macros that are just so incredibly beneficial to the body when it has been without. So I don't see any in the chat. And I just want to give it one more second because I don't want to pass up the opportunity to educate if somebody's not clear
Of
on
course.
breaking a fast. Everybody's good. They're all super smart and they all know what they're doing. So it's
Love
great.
it. Love it. Good job, guys. Um,
Mm.
so I'm going to transition into soups, and I just pulled a couple of quotes here. Soup puts the heart at ease, calms down the violence of hunger, eliminates the tension of the day, and awakens and refines the appetite. I just really love that one. And then also, soup is the poetry of the kitchen. Just some sweet notes for this as we transition into this.
And you've got that really calming, lovely voice. So that last
I
one was just
appreciate you.
melody.
Appreciate you. Um, as we, kind of touched on in the beginning here, you can really get all of the macros into soup. It's just really uniquely positioned to allow that to get your protein, carbs, fat, and water. And if you need more or less of any of these, just simply adjust your soup recipe as needed. Soups really are the whole shebang. So I have some recipes for you guys, that I am excited to share. So this one is a really big favorite at our house. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She also loves it. So for those of you with picky kiddos or kiddos that you just want to try and get more nourishment into, we have found that soup is a really good way to just experiment with different flavors and getting different veggies in, because you can really mask some different flavors, or sometimes add a little bit of cheese or whatever that is to help get those in and help keep boosting the kiddos microbiome and just help keep exposing them to whole foods, right, as much as possible. So yeah, this is just a pound of Italian sausage browned, 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. This you can increase, right? You could add 8 tablespoons of avocado if you wanted to really increase the fat here. A yellow onion, some kohlrabi. I really love kohlrabi in general as a replacement for a potato. If you're really trying to do a lower carb option, I think it really translates well, especially in a soup like that where you can get it pretty soft. The garlic, the salt, and then this is where you can employ your bone broth. And really, get some additional value out of that whole soup. So you can put a quart of your bone broth. You can really put any flavor in. I do usually use chicken, but you can really use pretty much any flavor. It kind of just melds in. And then And then after you cook it all, and you can cook it on the stovetop, or you can, I put a little note down here under the photo that you can also just throw everything in but the kale and the milk, whatever milk you want to use. I use almond milk a lot too. But you can throw everything into the slow cooker and let it just go for the day. And then just come home to your soup. And I put my kale in the bottom of the soup bowl, and then I pour this on top, and then it just kind of nicely wilts everything. And then I'll add milk. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of parm to that, just depending on whether you're avoiding dairy at the time or not. Um, yeah, this one, like I said, has just been a really good option at home.
Okay. I gotta ask
Yes.
because we have been around the bend with protein and all different conversations. Do tell kohlrabi for Rob for our guests who don't know what it is. One and two, when did Italian sausage get healthy?
Yeah, great question.
So I'm
Mhm.
just, I mean, is there a brand that you use? Is
Oh,
what, I mean, just tell us those
yeah,
two things because again, I always try to take on the hat of those people who are listening, who are not going to ask the question. So those are the two
yeah.
things that jumped in. Sausage,
Okay.
I mean, my husband would be like, "Oh, yes, please make that." But again, if we are healing, I think I know exactly what sausage is, so I'm just curious, can you talk about that a little bit? And I am teasing you, so, I mean, it does
Yeah.
look delicious, but I do wanna ask for those of us who have always thought that sausage was not an
Yeah,
option.
of course. I think sausage can be a really great source of fat. And you want to make sure that you're sourcing your pork well. So we have a local farmer here that'll do a butcher for us from a grass-fed, grass-finished hog. And then we actually don't process any of the meat. We have them grind it. And so we just take ground pork, and then I season it. And so I'll add fennel and salt, a little bit of paprika, and then of course just kind of a lot of Italian seasonings
Yeah.
into it, either fresh or from a dried bottle. And you can really then whip that up pretty quickly. Um, so, I think it's certainly not something you want to eat every day, but I think that, yeah, I
But you
think
like the fat content and
I
you
like the
and the
fat
most
content.
important thing is that we wanna source from the same way that we're getting
Exactly.
our every other meat. So
Exactly.
you sort of stumped me, Heather, because like, truly never thought that I guess I didn't give it much thought, but I didn't expect to see sausage on a list of okay,
Yeah.
fabulous. And then so for our listeners who are not familiar with the kohlrabi, is that how you
Cool. Yeah, kohlrabi. So it is a root-like plant that is not a root. And if you all are familiar with Dr. Nasha Winters and you're trying to stay low carb, one of the things that she says is above the ground. And so kohlrabi does grow above ground, and it grows in a big bulb, and then it'll get sort of big kale-like stems that come off of it. And so if you're lucky enough to be able to get the whole plant, you can't always, just depending, on where you're buying it, because frequently when it's sold at the market, like at the grocery store or whatever, it'll just be that big bulb. Um, but it is a root-like plant that does grow above ground level, and so it is a little bit lower in carbs than something that would be
what does
below the
it
ground.
taste like? Is it what do you think the flavor can you
Yeah,
describe it?
really good question. I mean, it has a little bit of a cauliflower taste. I would say where cauliflower meets potato. It's kind of just that sort of in between there. And yeah, it's really delicious. I do peel it lightly before I chop it. The skin can be a little bit tough. And like I said, it's got the stalks that shoot up. So there will be like pretty big nubs around the edge as well. that you can shave off and make your meal as palatable for different picky eaters as possible.
It looks so comfort the soup in general just looks really, really comforting. It reminds me of like a potato or a leek soup with a little bit of kale in it. This is an interesting one for me, Heather. I'm glad that you and I hope for everybody else as well. The questions that are coming in right
Mhm.
now, one is if you were not going to eat the sausage,
Mhm.
would something like a ground turkey or a ground something or another
Yeah,
work? What else could
of
you
course.
substitute? What else might be an okay thing? And not to put you on the
Yeah,
spot,
that's
I'm
a
thinking
really
also
great
like
question.
chicken. You could also probably do some
Chicken.
diced chicken.
For sure. Yeah, I like to buy that ancestral blend of chicken. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's got a little bit of organ meat that's blended. I think it's 5% organ meat blended into the chicken. Um,
What's the brand again?
hmm.
Do you I thought you said it. Don't you don't have to think on
It
top. I'll
they
look it up.
call it an ancestral blend, and I don't know the exact brand. I
Okay.
do buy it at natural grocers if you guys have a natural grocers near you, but it's usually right in with the frozen chicken, frozen ground chicken. So that can be a really good way to boost your nutrients. You can, of course, do it with ground turkey or ground beef, even. And I think it would probably be best with either ground chicken or ground turkey. And I would make it just like I said with the Italian seasoning. So I really like to get the fennel in there. I love the flavors of fennel
Yep.
and the salt, and then just the Italian seasoning. Really, you can be creative with it, but I like to like mix all that in before I even cook it, before I cook the meat, and I'll just like really give it a good squashing with my hands and then throw it in the skillet and cook it up that way.
Well, I am definitely going to give this one a go. I'd be curious to know if you're going to give this one a try, put it in the chat. We need to know because like I said, I so seldom am I like surprised. This is a good one. This is a really good one. Sarah says she's going to give it a try as well. Wendy said it sounds
Awesome.
delicious. Um, some people just Googled kohlrabi. I was the same way. So you definitely taught us something new. That's great. So
Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, and this is probably an oldie but a goodie, but a butternut squash soup. So I don't like cutting a squash when it's raw. So you could, if you are okay with that, you can also do that method of cooking your squash. But I like to roast my squash, so I'll go through and just put a whole bunch of punctures like all over that squash, and like a 1 inch, like I said here, like a 1 inch square around the entire squash, and then have your oven preheated to about 400 and cook it for 45 minutes. And then when you take it out, it's like still a little bit firm depending on the size of your squash. If it's a smaller one, you may want to start with like 30 or 40 minutes. But the medium to large 45 minutes usually does the trick, and then you can still kind of take your vegetable peeler and go
right.
around the outside and get the skin off for whatever you can't just scoop out. Butternut squash does have a very thin skin, so it doesn't scoop out quite as nicely as a pumpkin, for example.
Side note for our Northeast folks, this is Wegmans that does an organic cubed already done for you squash that you can
Ooh,
use and then do
yes.
that. So again, I don't know where you all are located, but there are a few hacks and I would agree with you, Heather. It's the butternut squash. This is a delicious soup, but it is a pain to
The
get
pain.
the
Mhm.
butternut the squash where you want it because it's just this big bulbous hard
Totally.
um effort and you got to be careful too because as you
It
mentioned
is.
I think that your comment about roasting it get that a little softer at least so you can get the knife in it and be able to get out that flesh so this is I love this recipe and I also love this recipe with an organic green apple slices in there and I'll puree that into it just adds a little bit of flavor and I love the pumpkin seeds on top this just screams fall.
Yeah, and this is another one too where you can like once you get your squash roasted and you can roast it the day before or however you want to prepare it, you can have it the day before or whatever, but throw it all into your slow cooker in the morning and come home
Mm,
and
yeah.
have a meal already, and really all you need to do then in the evening is do the puree part of it. If you have an immersion blender, that works probably the best. It's sort of the least messy way to puree a soup. Um But yeah, this is again, my 9-year-old daughter loves this one. So I was kind of trying to do some kid-friendly ones as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great one. I've always felt that the butternut squash soup, though, because it's so heavy carb, because it is considered a
It can
starchy
be.
carb, but
Yes.
I think you're counterbalancing it with the bone broth, and of course that
Yep.
fat,
Yep.
rounding out those macros with the avocado oil and even the olive oil. Just think that portion control here is probably a good idea, and also the pumpkin seeds for the fat. But it is an outstanding soup. So if you've never tried butternut squash soup, this is the one. I don't know where you're going next, but you're making me really hungry, and this is looks really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's right before lunch for you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and on this one too, as we talk about balancing out those macros, like I've added ground chicken to this or even a little bit of chicken breast. You could sprinkle a little bit of bacon on top. Of course, like sugar-free, nitrate-free, all of the
Yeah.
grass-fed goodness, and sourcing your meats appropriately. You can also do walnuts instead of
Mm,
pumpkin seeds, and that
mm,
also tastes really good. And that can
interesting.
be a really good source for getting some additional omega-3s. You could really even throw like some smoked salmon on this, and I think
Mm,
it would taste pretty amazing.
that looks delicious.
Some ideas for y'all. Yeah. Okay, I have two more
Ooh,
recipes. So we have a curried cauliflower soup. I am actually making this tonight. I was putting together all of my stuff and I was like, I'm gonna make this. I haven't made it since last fall actually, but this one is again a huge hit at our house. It is amazing. And cauliflower is definitely in season right now too. So are the butternut squash and the kohlrabi, actually, if I want to go back a couple of slides. But it is just so good. So yeah, you really start. I cooked my cauliflower actually last night, just so that I'd have it all ready, so that today basically I'm just gonna heat up my onion, add the curry paste and the lemon zest. And I don't like to add wine to my soups, and that's kind of added a lot. And so I have like a wine hack here where I do a tablespoon of lemon juice mixed with a half a cup of water. And of course, that's going to get you like a little over a half cup of wine, right? Like that would be like the conversion there. So
um,
this recipe
interesting.
called for a half cup of wine. I did this as a sub. Um, yeah, and then the coconut milk, of course. And I do try to do the keto sweeteners. So I have the monk fruit sweetener here. You could also use a half a teaspoon. It's such small. You could even just completely omit it, right? And it's
Yeah.
not going to impact your
Is
flavor too much.
Lancanto, is that a brand of
It
them?
is a brand,
Okay. And
yes.
so for our listeners who aren't familiar with monk fruit sweetener, this is a sweetener that is said to not adjust the blood sugar. So
Yes.
it's a more of a steady state, but let's be super clear. It's still a sweetener. It's still sending the
Yep.
message to the brain that it's getting
Yep.
something sweet. And I'm going to agree with Heather. Half teaspoon is like next to nothing. For me personally, I toss that out.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't tried the recipe and I don't know how much of
Yeah.
a difference it makes.
No, it doesn't make a difference at all. I don't use it, but the recipe calls for it. So,
Yes,
for
yes.
anybody who has like more of a, desire for a sweetened palate, or maybe, you want to, if you're making it for your kiddo and you want them to eat it, you could add just like a little sprinkle, um, trade-offs.
Yes.
So, yeah,
It
the
looks
rice
great.
vinegar really does add a lot of flavor. So, I recommend like as I'm pureeing this soup, I'll add the rice vinegar and sort of like taste it as I'm going so that I don't overdo it because, I'm pretty loosey-goosey with my recipes in the kitchen. And so I have like the one that I'm making tonight, I have a huge cauliflower. It was like one and a half cauliflower because I had some left over from another one or another recipe that I did. And so I just had a lot of cauliflower. And so because the recipe is going to vary, then I'd recommend sort of, just to whatever your taste is going to be there. And then, yeah, the green onions and the fresh basil, they
Mm.
really pack a punch and it is a fabulous soup.
Silly question. I don't have a ton of experience with Thai red curry paste, but is it exact? Does it look like a tube and you find it in?
Oh.
Yeah,
No, that's a great question, Stacy. So that is a little jar. You can usually find it in the Asian food section at your grocery. You can buy it on Amazon, or Thrive Market if you don't have access. To, it's not super uncommon, but I know there are going to be folks that just have a very, down and dirty grocery store. So, yeah, Thrive Market or Amazon would also carry it. And it's actually made by a company. The one that I buy, I believe, is, I think the company is Thai Foods or something really
got it.
descriptive.
Okay. Looks, I mean,
Um,
that this one looks great too. Now I'm confused which one I'm gonna make.
Yeah. And I think worth noting too for folks who maybe have, a more sensitive palate to heat, the Thai red curry can be spicy too. So you'll want to throttle that one depending on, how much spice you like or don't like.
Well, it's so timely too because in our family, the day before Thanksgiving, we have a soup bar. So it usually
Yeah.
entails some sort of potato, like a sweet potato bar as well, but gives you an opportunity because these are all very different that you could
Ah.
you could make them and enjoy. Now, whether or not I get that done is another story for another time, but I'm certainly going to try them all. And I cannot tell you which one is my favorite so far because each one that you put up is interesting and intriguing. So I'm curious to know which one your favorite is.
Ooh. I kind of feel like it's the curried cauliflower soup.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And you have one more for us? I'm
I
is that
do.
right? Oh, I can't wait
I
to
do have
see.
one more. And the last one's actually not a soup. Oops, lost my mouse here. The last one
Ooh,
is a bone broth cacao. I just kind of had to
what?
throw this in here
What?
because it is such
I
a
see
nourishing
chocolate. I
way
see chocolate.
to get a little treat. So yeah, you take your bone broth. You can do a half cup of milk of choice. I make my own almond milk. I also make my own coconut milk. I've made it with both. It's delicious either way. 2 tablespoons of raw cacao powder. And again, with the sweetener, I have it here with the Lancanto, which it is a monk fruit sweetener. I am specifying the golden variety. You could also make this with maple syrup, and I would say, probably about the same amount of maple syrup. Um, and a scoop of collagen. That would be optional, but just to give
Ah,
yourself like a little bit of extra collagen if you want to, that would be an option. And with this too, once you make it all, you can add a whipped cream to the top. You can add cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, any of those favorite sort of like fall spices, even just that pumpkin spice blend. With the whipped cream, I will always, because I do certainly gear towards like a lower carb, keto approach.
could
Um,
you use coconut? Is there's such a thing as coconut whipped cream, right?
yes,
Yeah. Can you use
yes,
that one?
yes, of course.
And Lynette's asking the question that I was getting ready to ask. Can you recommend a great collagen that would be okay for this recipe? What would you recommend? What's your favorite collagen?
Ooh, yeah, I have, I think it's Sunny Farms grass-fed collagen that I buy on Amazon.
Got it.
I do
Lynette, I'm
take
hoping
it
that
out of the
answers.
bag and I pour it into a mason jar when I get it. So then I'm like, wait, is that the right brand? I think that's the right brand, Sunny
Yeah,
Farm.
and it's unflavored, right,
It
Heather?
is
It would be an
unflavored.
unflavored collagen. Would
Yep.
something like the Vital Proteins work again?
That one would absolutely work
Okay,
too. I think Vital Proteins in general, Stacy, is a really good brand. So
great,
yeah,
great.
of course.
Lynette says, "Thank you." I was getting ready to ask the same question. This is like,
Yep.
the top 3 questions that I always get asked is about the protein bar, the collagen, and the smoothie experience, and in here, again, if we could just blast out our favorites because they are, buyer beware. They're all over the place and you don't know what you're getting in them. So
Yes.
when we're lucky enough to have someone like you on our show, hearing your favorites, remission nutrition, that just the ones that are your go-to because they blend, literally, I'm not trying to be funny, but there's a whole bunch of choices. And I think that,
Sure.
if we get super clear on our go-tos, then this takes away the daunting task. It's one thing to be making this huge bone broth recipe, but when it gets down to these specific ingredients, I really do feel like all of us want to nail it, because if you're going to go to the trouble to do it, we may as well do it right. And I just think we're
100%.
bombarded with information, don't know. So I'm going to say out loud, I feel like for our listeners that you find a brand that you love and just stick to it. You're going to get pulled in a million different directions with all different things. Some of it comes down to flavor, but other parts of this is, where can we find the cleanest source of what we're trying to do? And remember what Heather said, the collagen is the key part here. We want to be able to repair and, work on that connective tissue and then heal and whatnot. So finding a good source, and you all don't have to write down anything. We will make sure at Believe Big that not only is Heather well represented, but that these recommendations and these just suggestions that she gives, we'll put them in the show notes. So I love this one. Is it tastes chocolatey and
Very.
heavy and all the
Yeah,
great things?
it's delicious.
That's so great. Well,
Yeah.
my goodness. I don't know if do you have more, or can I segue us into some questions?
Yeah, segue us into some
All
questions.
right, so I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. I
Yep.
have to know, will you tell us about Mother the Storm?
Oh, of course. Yes. So I am in my own active cancering process with breast cancer, stage 4, diagnosed in 2018. So I'm 6 years out, and just in a deep desire to share the healing that I have experienced through food, spirituality, community, through Dr. Nasha's advocacy program, just through everything, all of the amazingness that I have truly experienced while being in this pressure cooker of sorts. I just really want to share with everyone who is in a similar process or has a loved one in a similar process. It's such a difficult space to be in, and it's such a um, complicated path to walk, but it is filled with so many treasures along the way. And if you are willing to really open your heart to that, and yeah, I do just feel generally really passionate about sharing. And so I started Mother the Storm after completing Dr. Nisha's advocacy program in 22. And since then, I've just been really working to build up my resources to be able to help people to my highest potential.
So Heather, if somebody really, the story resonates with them and they wanted to work with you, would be the best route to get to you beyond reaching out to us and we will pass them to you? Is Mother of the Storm the best way to get to
Yeah.
have some time with you? Yeah.
Yep. Motherthestorm.com. I have some contact information in there, more about my story, a podcast, and yeah.
I I'll speak on behalf of all of us. I think that you are the picture of health, and your words really resonate. And um, one of the things that really strikes me, so hits me in the heart, is the fact that it's folks like you. It is folks like me who have had lost in this with a loved one. It's folks like, people traveling with Nasha and Evilise, um, that there's nothing like hearing words from somebody who's walking the walk alongside of folks who are also healing and scared, because again, your demeanor and your voice and it is very calming. And of course, we're sending all of our love and prayers to you, but in gratitude for sure, Heather, because I think the work that you're doing is amazing. Really drilling down to what I call the tactical information. It's one thing to talk about, this is what we should do and this is what you want to be thinking about. But I feel like after doing this for a period of time, it is, people very much want the recipes, the how to,
Yeah.
let me walk with you and let me do as much as what you're doing, because I want what you have. And as you're healing, we're healing. So thank you for your time. I'm going to pause for 1 second and make sure that we don't have any questions for you. Lynette just wanted you to know that it was beautiful, and she's currently in the Terrain Advocate program as well. And she was grateful for you
Wonderful.
to share, and Wendy is grateful for you sharing. Um, lots of people wanting to do these recipes. So, time well spent with
Mm.
you. And if there are no other questions, we can certainly bring it to a close. If you have any last words for us, I will make sure that our listeners get your contact information and, of course, all these great recipes.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Stacy. I'm generally just grateful for this opportunity and for Believe Big and all the beautiful work that you guys do through Believe Big. So
We
thank
love you all very much. And Heather, you as well. And just wishing you the best on your continued healing journey. And I just want to say thank you from on a personal side. This was great. And I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to get in the kitchen.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so
Talk to
much.
you all next month. Have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. We at Believe Big are very grateful for each of you. You make our work feel like we are really moving the needle forward in this big healing journey. So thank you to all of you as well. See you next time.
Bye. Thank
Okay.
you.